Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 68th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 68, The Telepaths. Achiko's a telepath. Himiko gasped loudly before the girl in question covered her mouth. Shhhhhhh. We're trying to keep that on the down low, Achiko said quietly. Himiko nodded frantically, not wanting to be thrown into orbit for this. Izumi sighed, Durandal standing next to her. This was going slightly as she expected it to go. The four of them had just finished dinner and had gone off to have a private talk about Himiko's blood-fueled telepathy, finding a small spot along the side of a cliff. Not a great place for Izumi due to her fear of heights, but it was a good distance away from the camp. Achiko removed her hand from over Himiko's mouth. Yes, I am a telepath like Eri. With telekinesis thrown in as well. It's how I can move things around that are under the effects of my quirk. Himiko nodded. Okay, that I understand. Okay, I lied, I didn't understand any of that. I know Eri has non-quirk powers. But, how do Achiko and I have them as well? I'm still working on that part, Izumi replied. Achiko already knows, but she's refraining from telling me all that stuff until she's ready to tell me. Prior agreement and all that. Best guess is that you're a hybrid of something, she said, not wanting to dump the existence of aliens on Himiko just yet. Something? Himiko asked, looking annoyed. What do you mean by something? Not sure, Izumi replied. That's why I'm calling it something. It's only a placeholder until I know what that something is. Himiko nodded. I see. And Achiko already knows this, but isn't telling you until you're both ready. Achiko nodded. There's still a lot I still don't understand about what I am, so I want to fully understand exactly what I am before I go explaining it to Izumi, or anyone else. Just to be sure that I don't make any mistakes. Himiko nodded. Right, understood. I can wait. Let's just deal with me now, worry about what I am later. They were still in the middle of testing Himiko's quirk and what new changes it had. Blood magnetization and absorption were already a given, and now she had blood-fueled telepathy. Well, sort of. She could only read the minds of those she had drank blood from, and only if she transformed into them, which at the moment, was everyone in 1A+ Mei and Chiharu. They had no idea why her telepathy functioned like this. Izumi thought that she might form some sort of psychic link with the person she transformed into, but she wasn't 100% sure about that. There were just so many unknowns that these telepathic abilities bring to the table. So, since you just told me you don't really understand your powers, Himiko continued. Who can we bring in to help teach me, and why is it roles? Achiko spluttered. What makes you think it's her? She asked nervously, wondering how Himiko figured it out so quickly. Because she has powerful telepathic and telekinetic powers, Himiko replied. And we know from Eri that these powers aren't linked to quirks. Plus she has red shoes, and as we all know, quirkless people all wear red shoes, she said slowly as she looked down at Izumi's red boots. Well. If it isn't the consequences of my own actions, she said nervously, realizing that she may have just stumbled upon something concerning their resident cinnamon roll. Mainly, that she has a quirk yet wears red boots. Izumi gulped. Would why you believe me if I said that I liked the color? She asked nervously. Himiko looked at Izumi with an unimpressed look on her face, before she smirked. Nah, I'm just kidding with you. You said you were a late bloomer who thought she was quirkless. I can understand why you still like wearing red shoes even after your quirk came in. Izumi breathed a sigh of relief. That felt too close to comfort. Well, that was close, the third user remarked. Maybe you should think about losing the red shoes. Himiko's head suddenly shot around. Who the fuck was that? Izumi blinked. Did Himiko just hear one of the vestiges? How? Not even Eri could hear them. Well, she could, but she could never make out what they were saying, she just knew that her quirk could speak. I didn't hear anything, Achiko said, looking confused. Well, someone just said something about losing red shoes. Himiko said, looking around. Achiko turned towards Izumi. I think she can also hear the vestiges of One for All, she said telepathically. What's One for All? Himiko asked before shaking her head. You know what, never mind, don't tell me. I'm already going down one rabbit hole at the moment. I do not need to dive headfirst into another one. Just pretend I didn't hear that, okay? Izumi gulped. This was bad. Himiko just found out about One for All. Yes, she promised not to tell anyone, but she still knew. And she was going to need to be told what it was. Hopefully later, because she did not want to dump anything else on her right now. As long as the vestiges remain quiet, things should be fine. For now at least. Telepathic interception, Achiko gasped. But, Rolls said that telepathic transmissions can't be intercepted by other telepaths. Knew she was an alien, Durandal remarked smugly. Himiko stared at Durandal with wide eyes. Please tell me these powers aren't alien in origin? She asked, having watched enough sci-fi to know where this was going. Durandal banged his head against the floor. Fuck. Izumi sighed. And here I was hoping to ease her into this. Achiko frowned and nodded. Yeah, you are, these non-quirk telepathic powers are, not exactly from around here, she said before glaring at Durandal. Look, in my defense, she is named after a fucking car, Durandal said. And now that we know that she's an alien, she will be teased endlessly because an alien naming themselves after a car is just asking to be noticed. So, back up. Aliens are real? Himiko asked. Yep, we exist, Achiko said with a sigh. I'm technically an alien. Half-human hybrid thing. It's where the telepathy comes from. As is Rolls, who is named after a car. Honestly, I have no idea why no one thought to connect the dots. Huh, well, that explains a lot, Himiko said with a shrug. She then grinned. And yes, I am so teasing Rolls about this. I wouldn't advise it, Achiko said. She can force choke you like Darth Vader. Oh yes, please harder mommy. Himiko blurted out. Izumi and Achiko blinked. Durandal would have as well, but he didn't have eyes. What? Himiko shrugged. Have you seen Sue's thighs? She crushes my head between them like every other day. I'm also still waiting for my turn to have my head crushed like a watermelon between Izumi's thighs. I am so very annoyed that some annoying British guy got his head crushed between them before I did. Izumi blushed heavily. Why is everyone so interested in being choked out between my thighs? Because it's hot, Achiko replied bluntly because she too wanted to feel Izumi's thighs around her head, Mirko style. Okay, so, ignoring the fact that I've just been flat out told that aliens do indeed exist, Himiko said. And how Achiko also wants Izumi's thighs around her head. Let's back up a bit, telepathic interception. You just intercepted a telepathic message I sent only to Izumi, Achiko explained. You should not have been able to hear it, but you did. And that's new, even to me. Also you seem rather calm about being told aliens exist? Himiko grinned. What, I've been teasing that girl with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy references. And now I know I am completely justified in doing so. Also, I kind of suspected something was off with me after I survived getting my head crushed. This just confirms it. Achiko, just call Rolls here, please. We need her help, Izumi said, still blushing. Achiko nodded before she closed her eyes, breathed out, and searched for Rolls' mind. It wasn't easy, and it took her a while to find her, but she eventually did. Rolls. I need your help with something. Don't worry, I'm already on my way, Rolls replied. I'll be there in a moment. Okay, I heard that as well, Himiko said. I can definitely intercept telepathic transmissions. So, close-range mind reading of those you've drank blood from, and telepathic interception, Izumi said, writing in a notebook labeled bullshit. I think your telepathy works more along the lines of a listening station. Other telepaths are just like radio transmitters, and you're a listening station intersecting these transmissions other telepaths are sending out. I think that's why it needs blood to fuel it. It functions so differently from the norm that it needs an additional fuel source to power it. But then, why didn't these powers make themselves known with the rest of your quirk, or before it? Why did they only appear after the Hosu incident? She wondered. Plus she could hear the vestiges as well. Did this mean that One for All had some sort of telepathic element to it? She shook her head. I'm sorry, Himiko, but this just has me stumped. If it was a normal quirk, then I'm sure that I'll be able to help. But this telepathy is new to me. The mechanics are so much different from what I'm used to. Eri can read the mind and speak to a machine with her mind, yet Ochako can't. You can only read the minds of those within a few feet of you if you drank their blood, but you can intercept telepathic transmissions. It's almost like there are different variants of telepaths out there. Like speciation, Durandal said. These telepaths, wherever they came from, might have, at one point, been related to the same species. But after hundreds of years, evolved into separate branches, forming a new distinct subspecies. Not only will their bodies have changed to adapt to their surroundings, but their telepathic abilities may have changed as well. Forming a monophyletic group, he said, hell, these variants may not even be able to procreate with each other due to how different they are. But, this kind of biodiversity among something like humans requires thousands of years of isolation. 2,779 years, the voice of Rolls spoke into their minds before the girl in question flew up the side of the cliff. In several jumps, of course, since it was too high to make the jump in one go. She was also wearing her blazer as well. That's how long it's been to the day since the Great Collapse. How long? Durandal asked, having not heard the number. Right, forgot you have a synthetic as well, Rolls said as she walked over to Himiko. 2,779 years. Wow. Yeah, that's enough time for speciation to happen, Durandal remarked. So, you're an alien, right? Himiko remarked as Rolls walked over to her. Yep, I'm an alien, Rolls replied as she held some kind of crystal up to Himiko's head, which glowed an odd shade of red. She then glanced over towards Ochako, who gave her a nod. Just the basics. We're called semitics. We look exactly like you humans, but our brains are far more developed than yours, allowing us to use psychic abilities like telepathy and telekinesis without the need for a quirk. There are about 100 different variants of semitics, each one having different levels of telepathic abilities. And you are right, Durandal. The different variants can't procreate with each other. Ochako and Himiko are both hybrids of different variants. Save for Izumi, she's very much human. Oh, thank God, Izumi said with a relieved sigh. That meant that both her parents were very much human. Great. Did not need being hybrid on her plate. It was starting to get rather full right now. What with One for All, Durandal, all for one, knowing that aliens exist, all that stuff. So, I'm part alien then, Himiko said calmly. When we get back to school, I'm going to call the police who handled my parents' arrest, because I'm starting to question the validity of my family tree. You seem oddly calm about this, Himiko, Ochako remarked. I've already vented my panic about not being fully human, Himiko said. Now all I need is some answers from my parents about which one of them isn't human, because I want to know which one of them gave me these bullshit powers that keep freaking me out. I can freak out about being an alien after I find out who's responsible for this. Ochako nodded. That was a far placement of priorities. Damn, just what kind of telepath are you, Himiko? Rolls asked, still holding the crystal up to Himiko. I can tell that you're a hybrid, but I can't sense any form of telepathic ability from you. Do I look like I know? Himiko asked with a shrug. I didn't even know I had these powers until about a month ago, and all I know about myself is that I can magnetize blood towards me, read the minds of those I've transformed into at close range, intercept telepathic transmissions, and regenerate from fatal wounds, memories intact. Also, what is that crystal thing you're holding up to my face? Well, I've never heard of a Semitic with abilities like yours before. Might need some help with finding out what variant of Semitic you are, because even I'm stumped, Rolls said, before shaking her head. I'll have to call my dad, he may know more about this. As for the crystal, it's a scanning crystal. It's a medical device used to check on someone's soul. I'm sorry, check on someone's soul? Durandal said, sounding confused. Why do you guys even need a device to check those things? Because there are things out there that can damage and destroy them, Rolls replied as she pocketed the crystal. Pray to any and every god out there that you never meet one. Because a damaged soul cannot be repaired. They all nodded, feeling slightly freaked out. If there were things out there that could damage or destroy a soul, then they had no interest in dealing with them. But knowing their luck and because they now know these things exist, they'll inevitably encounter one anyway because the universe hates them. Fun. So, you have no idea what variant of Semitic I'm a hybrid of then? Himiko asked, looking annoyed. Rolls nodded. I'm afraid not. I've never heard of a Semitic variant that has blood-fueled telepathy and can also intercept telepathic transmissions. If it was Eri I was examining, then I would know. There was a variant that could read the minds of what you would call alpha-level AI, but they're all dead-ish. There's one known survivor of that variant running about. The pirate Empress Paltheus, also known as Paltheus the Godslayer. Not someone you want around a child, by the way. Godslayer, Ochako said, looking confused. How do you kill a god? By ramming a starship into it, Rolls replied. Insert low-budget clip made in mod of the Enterprise ramming god. I should probably mention that our definition of a god is slightly different to yours, Rolls added. Only slightly though. They're still absurdly powerful beings. They're just real. I'm sorry, they're what? Durandal asked as the others gulped. This was nowhere near where they thought this discussion would go. Okay, so, let's put a pin in your god's a real thing, as well as this Paltheus woman, because I do not want to deal with those things today. Thank you very much, Izumi said, not wanting an existential crisis brought about by knowing that godlike beings exist out there in the universe and that someone managed to kill one of the fucking things. She wondered why Paltheus was called the Pirate Empress, but after killing a god, you can probably call yourself whatever the hell you want to, you got bragging rights after all. Save that till I need to know. Which is hopefully never, Izumi continued. My puny human mind is not prepared to comprehend this stuff. And never mention Paltheus again, even though she may be from the same variant as Eri, I do not need her messing up my home. I live here, and I don't want someone who kills gods for a living to come here and mess it up. Same, Himiko said. I am too panicked already learning that I'm not fully human, I do not need more things to panic me. So, Rolls. You mentioned something about a great collapse. What's that all about? She asked, changing the subject to something less disturbing. Rolls frowned. The Great Collapse was the fall of the old Semitic Republic. Thousands of years ago my species had a great empire that covered a small part of the galaxy, spanning the Abyss Cloud and Odysseus Cloud nebulas, and all the stars in between. And yes, that is small in comparison to the rest of the galaxy. But, an empire that big isn't easy to run. The story of the collapse is a long one that would take days to explain due to just how much happened to cause it. So, to cut a very long story very short, our homeworld was dying, it was evacuated, and during the evacuation, the government fucked up. The Republic collapsed violently. Every starship, every interstellar communication satellite, every space station, and so much more, was destroyed in a single day. No one knows how it happened, only that it did. Such was the devastation caused by the Great Collapse, it took 2,000 years for the survivors to reinvent space travel. 2,000 years. Izumi gasped. How did it take you so long to reinvent spaceflight? Simple, the old Republic limited starship construction to a single system, Rolls replied. Everything that was required to build a ship, as well as the knowledge to build them, was confined to that one system. None of the necessary information was stored elsewhere, so it all had to be reinvented. The Republic was run by idiots. They wanted to control everything from the homeworld, but the galaxy is so vast and big that even an empire the size of 2 nebulas was too much for them to control on their own, especially from the homeworld. And in the end, everything collapsed. It was the greatest mass extinction the galaxy had ever seen. Untold billions died, their deaths either quick or slow. It was the colonies that were on the uninhabitable worlds that suffered the most. People tried desperately to keep their colonies running, staving off their inevitable deaths as long as possible. But they lacked the resources to maintain them. No ships meant that they could not gather the resources they needed. In the end, they fell into disrepair. A few did manage to survive the reach for the stars once again, but they were few. Only the colonies on habitable worlds really survived the collapse. And even then, they had to reinvent almost everything. Out of thousands of colonies, only about 100 survived to reach the stars again, building their own empires within the corpse of the old republic. There are a few other worlds that survived, but they regressed so much that they still haven't developed enough to develop spaceflight. Some worlds are still using sailing ships to traverse their world. We leave those ones alone. Izumi, Ochako and Himiko all stared wide-eyed and rolls as she told her story. This great collapse sounded horrifying. It couldn't have been a pleasant time to live through, especially on the planets that needed domed colonies. She couldn't imagine how those people felt, trying to maintain their homes despite rapidly running out of the resources they needed to survive, holding on to life for as long as they could. Yeah, I can see how that could cause a species as complicated as yours to undergo speciation, Durandal said. And here I thought the Avalon War was a senseless loss of life. Your little Avalon War pales in comparison to any war my species has fought ever since we went interstellar, Rolls said. Entire worlds nuked into oblivion in senseless slaughters. War is so much more different when you have the threat of orbital bombardment looming over you during every battle. Don't let Ochako get her hands on one of your ships then, Izumi said. She'll try to create the Imperial Machi Empire in real life. Rolls blinked. Imperial Machi Empire? It's my custom race in Stellaris, Ochako replied nervously. Rolls sighed. Of course you'll make an Imperium, you crazy imp. Well, don't worry about that. Combat-capable warships require hundreds of people to crew and would take months to even years to get here. Space is big after all, and it takes a long time to get anywhere. Oh, well that's annoying, Ochako said with an annoyed sigh. There goes my idea of exploring the galaxy Star Trek style. Reality is often disappointing, Rolls said. Our ships are slow, take days or weeks to get to wherever they need to be. Travel between star systems takes weeks, months, or even years to get anywhere important. We need to use tiny wormholes to send transmissions between star systems. And that's just in our small part of the galaxy. If it wasn't for a convenient stable wormhole, it would take us over 100 years to get here, she explained. We don't even have inertia dampers, with jump-capable ships requiring to be designed to use both thrust gravity and centrifugal gravity. We are very much limited by the laws of physics. Well, that answers that question of how these aliens build their starships. But then, how do they travel interstellar? And why did their ships need to use both thrust and centrifugal gravity? Questions for another day. Her brain was already at max processing capacity already. She could ask those questions later. First things first. Okay, let's promise to never tell May about the existence of aliens, Izumi said. They all nodded. The last thing they needed was for the crazy inventor that was May finding out that aliens are real. Because knowing her, she'll be after that sweet alien technology. They did not need her messing around with whatever these aliens used to travel between star systems. We should also probably head back now, Izumi said. The others might get suspicious if we stay here any longer. We can go over more of this on a later date, I've got a lot to process already. Himiko nodded. Agreed. I've learned most of what I've wanted to learn. As well as a few things I wished I had not learned. We can cover more about this nonsense later, I need to sleep this off, she said before she turned to walk off. Only to stop when she saw Eri and Kota peeking out from behind a rock. They blinked, shocked to see the two young children just standing there, watching them. How did I fail to notice them? Rolls wondered, having not sensed either child. Durandal sighed. Normally we are so much better at hiding this kind of thing. How much did you two hear? Izumi asked. Yes, Kota replied, looking rather nervous. Which translated to, I heard everything. Well. Fuck. Why are you even here? Himiko asked. I wanted to show Eri my secret place, Kota replied, still looking nervous. I didn't realize you found it as well. Who's this Palpheus lady? Eri asked, a curious look in her eyes. Izumi turned towards Rolls, an annoyed look on her face. I blame you for this. Rolls sighed. I'll tell you about her. Later. Right now we need to get back to camp. Eri nodded, an excited look on her face. Izumi had no idea why Eri was so interested in this woman. Check that, she did know, they had the same powers. She guessed she wanted to learn more about her, so that she may be able to get a better idea of how to control her powers. She shook her head, she can deal with this later, she's got enough in her head already that she needs to process properly before she gets another info dump. At least she knew what species Ochako was a hybrid of. These semitics sounded interesting. They all had the same base powers, but, after thousands of years, different variants with different levels of abilities sprung up. They certainly had things easier than humanity did. Humans had to try and control a society full of billions of unique abilities that not everyone had. The Semitics on the other hand only had to worry about one ability that they all had. She wanted to learn more about them, like what variants Ochako, Himiko, and Rolls were. But later, she was still processing what she learned today, not helped by learning that someone killed a god. She can learn more about them later, like, next year. She needs to rest her brain. As they made their way back to the camp, they did not notice that they were being watched. Even Rolls, with her overpowered telepathy, failed to notice them. Someone, wearing Hummerai's robes, watched them as they walked away. Well, watched would be an odd term to use, since underneath those robes was a mindless, soulless husk. Someone who had their soul, the very thing that made them, gone, stripped away and consumed by something that knew nothing but hunger. A hunger that could only be satiated by consuming the souls of others. Unfortunately, for this consumer of souls, the souls of those around him were pathetic. Not like the ones he was used to. They were so weak and unfilling. Like a single grain of rice. It would take thousands to saturate his hunger, millions maybe. And on this world, that was an impossible task to do without being noticed. He was powerful, but there were limits to his powers. Especially now that his body was weakening. Everything had its limits after all, such as his body. He needed a new one. Younger, stronger, and free from the toxin that was killing it. Thankfully for him, there was a fresh one he could use. The robed figure collapsed into its base components, its purpose complete. His new body had been selected. Now all he needed to do was take it. Meanwhile, on Island. A loud bang echoed across the testing room. Toshinori smiled, his fist smashed against a training dummy built to withstand his punches. A hole blasted straight through it. He smiled as he looked down at the gauntlet on his right arm. With a simple flex of his arm, the gauntlet shifted and compressed into a bracelet that blended in with his suit. Perfect. You really outdid yourself this time, David. All for one won't know what hit him. Glad you liked it, David said as he walked over. I made a few modifications to the original design, such as the compact mode. Should be hard for All for One to detect. Unless he can read your mind, he won't see it coming. Don't count on it, Toshinori said. He has probably gathered thousands of quirks over the years. He just might have one, he said. Plus he may have Mirai's foresight quirk. I can't let him make eye contact with me. If he has eyes, that is. I should ask David for a tinted visor. Noted. I'll give you a telepath blocker, just in case, David said. Still, why did you ask for only one gauntlet capable of firing one shot? Wouldn't a gauntlet with multiple shots be better? I'll only get one shot, David, Toshinori said as he shrunk down to his weaker form. If I miss, All for One will not give me a second shot. I need to hit him with the first shot. Besides, we only have a few quirk erasing bullets, and we can't make more, not without torturing a young girl. David nodded. Yes, what happened to Eri was despicable. How could a man do something like that to a young girl? Unfortunately, there are people like that out there, Toshinori said with a frown. People who don't care about the suffering of others, and use others to their own selfish ends. That's why we heroes exist, to deal with such people and help those they hurt. David nodded. Well, I'm glad she's being looked after by someone who actually cares for her. Toshinori nodded. Eri was safe, and if Kaichisaki ever tried to take her back, well. Let's just say that almost everyone in UA wanted a piece of him. Oh yeah, Izumi's new hero costume is coming along nicely, David added. It should be ready for her by the time the next term starts. That's great, Toshinori said with a smile. Izumi's current one was, well, he had no qualms with those heroes who wanted a sexy costume, it was just, well, he questioned why she wore it. At least she'll be able to get a new, less sexy costume this time. Hey, by the way, where's Melissa? Oh, she's working on some little side project of hers, David replied. Not sure what it is, she won't tell anyone, not even me. She's only got robots working on it. But that's probably to be expected. Her kind do prefer to use robots for their projects. Toshinori nodded. Cardrians did like using machines and robots for almost all of their hard labor. They kind of needed to, since their own population was quite small. 500 million individual swarms, and that's just the Cardrians. Counting the other 5 races from their homeworld, it only counts up to 3 billion. A small number compared to humanity's 8 billion, and absolutely tiny compared to some of the other races out there. It's no surprise then that they use an ungodly number of robots and droids. They just don't have the population required to maintain an empire that spans over 100 star systems. Yeah, that sounds like Melissa, Toshinori said. She always did prefer working with, and on robots. Although, I may be partially responsible for that, he frowned, remembering how badly he had treated Melissa during the early years, and how undeserving she was of that treatment. Just don't make the same mistake with your successor, alright, David said before he removed the gauntlet from Toshinori's arm. She's not like you, you know. She's fragile. I fear if you push her too far, she'll break, he said as he examined the gauntlet. There's still a few adjustments that I need to make, he said before he walked off. I'll be done soon, I promise. Toshinori nodded as David walked off with the gauntlet. All for One was still out there, and Izumi was nowhere near ready to deal with him. He had to be the one to finish him off. He could not let Izumi be the one to face him, he won't give her time to be ready, not this time. Don't worry, Izumi, you will become a hero. I just know it. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 69. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.